Well, good evening and welcome into a Monday edition of KC Sports Tonight. I'm Mark Poulose, joined by Gabe Swartz here on this Monday. Gabe, we just had a bunch of weather come through the area. Did you hear that hail? What was going on for you?
Yeah, plenty of hail in here. I'm sure we'll have more weather coverage throughout the night. So stay tuned to KCTV for that. And whether it's streaming, if you've lost power, I know plenty of people have lost power. So people might be turning to Facebook for the news tonight rather than getting the TVs on. So we'll see, but lots of weather coverage tonight on KC25 and KC25.com. So
yeah, our weather team's certainly hard at work keeping you guys safe and informed. Be sure to check out all their stuff on all their platforms. They're doing everything they can to keep you guys safe. In the meantime, we have 5 great topics to talk about today here on KC Sports Tonight, and the first 3 have to do with the Kansas City Royals. This weekend, Gabe, it was a big weekend for the Royals. Champions Weekend at the K as they celebrated the 1985 and 2015 World Series champions. And for me, kind of seeing all this stuff, it was a beautiful weekend to see these World Series champs come back to town, kind of share their stories and experiences, and also see the interactions with those 85 and 15 teams with the 2025 group. But the big problem was on the field. The Royals offense continuing to struggle to score runs. The Cardinals taking 2 of 3 with the Royals winning the series finale. My question to you kind of starts here on the baseball side. It was a big weekend for the Royals. A lot of fans, a lot of attention, and the Royals go 1-2 at home against the Cardinals. Do you kind of have an issue or maybe a question about this team? Like, do they perform under pressure?
I don't know if I'm going to that avenue as much as I'm going to. I think that what we've seen is that this team is flawed and that the ceiling inherently is capped a little bit by the current, as you mentioned, and as we're going to discuss, roster construction. And it is also one of those things where we are quickly approaching the crossroads of the season, which will be, we're already nearing at, I think tonight is game 49 of the season for the Royals. So we're almost at 50 games. We're almost a third of the way done, which means inevitably we're a month away from being halfway through the season. And at a certain point, they're going to have to make decisions, one of which was made this weekend in terms of moving Jac Caglianone from AA to AAA. And not to spoil the entire show, but they're going to have to make a decision as to what level of commitment they are willing to make in making this a year of we're going for it versus having the belief, whether that is right, wrong, or debatable, that okay, well, what we've built this year, we can do again next year, and we can fix the hitting better next year from the get-go. I think that is a fascinating thing to evaluate, and it's fascinating to see what J.J. Picollo thinks, what Matt Quattrero and the coaching staff think, because I'm sure that there is constant communication between the coaching staff and the front office in terms of how are we going to fix this, because right now they're the worst offense in the AL, and yet they are one total win away from being the second most wins in the AL. And so that juxtaposition of you're in a decent spot, but you have a clear flaw that will have to be addressed somehow. We're past the point of just thinking, oh, somebody's going to regress to a better number, and Hunter Renfroe is going to get better, and Kevin Biggio is going to produce, or all of these different things. They're going to need help in some form to fix the issue. So what level of help, or is it just bringing Jack up? Who knows? But they're going to have to make that decision at some point.
I think you had made a very interesting comment when you said that, we're almost 50 games into the season, and we know a lot about this team, because that's actually something that Vinny Pasquantino said after yesterday's game. Actually, Neil Jones was talking to him, and Vinny was like, he's like, because Neil was asking him, like, you guys, the pitchers have been so good. Like, how much confidence does that give you guys going to the ballpark to know that the pitchers are going to be so good? And Vinny, who's known as being one of the best sound bites in all of Kansas City, he's like, Neil, I know why you're asking this question. You're trying to ask me a positive question about the pitching, but the fact of the matter is the reason you're asking that question is because the offense is not performing.
Yeah.
Vinny's like, we're getting to the point where the rubber's hitting the road, and we have got to start performing. I was looking up at the Royals stats. Vinny's not having the year that he wants, but he leads the team in home runs. He leads the team in RBIs, and he's really not producing at the plate. And I think this kind of leads right into our next topic, which is really how we really need to look at the Royals overall, is really with their roster construction. Because at this point of the season, we know what the Royals' strengths are. The Royals are one of the best pitching teams, if not the best pitching team in all of Major League Baseball. Right now, they have the second best ERA in all of baseball behind just the Mets. They have the top ERA in the American League. Their starters have pitched more innings than anybody in the big leagues, I think by 15 or 20 innings. So they're getting a lot of contributions, I should say, from their starting rotation. Their rotation is third in the majors in ERA. They have 24 quality starts, tied for the most in the big leagues, and the relievers have also been dominant. They're sixth in the majors in ERA. Now, the reason I'm bringing up roster construction is on Thursday at the Champions Gala, Dayton Moore actually made a very interesting comment to me. He's one of two men in the entire history of planet Earth who has constructed a World Series champion roster here in Kansas City. He was asked about why he decided to make the 2015, 2014, that kind of nucleus of guys the way that they were. They did not have a superstar. They had a bunch of really good players. They played as a unit, and they were asking, how'd you kind of come up with the plan for this roster? He said they looked at every team that was successful in Royals history and kind of wanted to base it off that. Now, J.J. Piccolo, we know he's a protege of Dayton Moore. He was following Dayton Moore for a lot of time. So I think we're still probably pretty much running a little bit of the same playbook with some minor tweaks with Matt Quattrero, the positional versatility coming from the Rays. Gabe, I guess kind of where I'm going with this is I know a lot of fans want to see the Royals improve their offense. They want to see more runs scored, but at the end of the day, the Royals are 26-22. They do have tied for the second most wins in the American League. The Royals, I guess, the way I want to frame this is we know they're not good offensively, but they're very good pitching, and they're very good at defense, not allowing runs to score. This is the type of baseball that people are going to play in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Is this just how the Royals are?
Well, I don't think it has to be how they are, because I don't think that the Hunter Renfroe signing when they made it prior to last year, they didn't envision him being a 170 hitter who hasn't hit a home run yet this season. They didn't envision Mark Canha being a guy who hasn't hit a home run this season when he was a guy who they acquired during spring training. I don't think that they envisioned Salvador Perez only having 2 home runs at this point in the season, although you could argue, you know what, it's a catcher in his mid-30s who has a lot of miles on him, and we've seen...
Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, he is, not to say that Salvi is over the hill in that regard, but he's definitely on the back nine of his career, and we've seen across the other end of the state, a team that the Royals were playing this weekend. He doesn't play for them anymore, but he spent a long time in St. Louis. Yadier Molina was a pretty productive hitter. He was never the level of hitter that Salvador Perez has been, but it tapered off near the end. And so I think that was the one thing that we said this offseason was it's hard to imagine Bobby, Vinny, and Salvi all producing at the exact same level, the elite level that they were producing in 2024. And so what we have seen is that 2 of the 3 have certainly regressed. And you could argue Bobby's not producing at the level of last year based on just power numbers alone. Bobby is not the issue. Although you could, again, say hitting with runners in scoring position has not been something that he has truly punished other teams for. And that's part of the broader issue that the Royals have, which is that they're just not punishing teams when they have guys on second and third, because they're getting guys on second and third a decent amount. And that's even yesterday. They had, 9-10 hits and only 2 runs to show for it. So Michael Garcia's hit was crucial. Dairon Blanco's hit was crucial, but
Drew Waters' hit
was crucial. Yeah. And so that's where I don't think that the Royals are just going to reserve themselves to the fact that, shucks, this is just the way that things are going to go. Everybody who we wanted to hit for power is not going to hit for power the way that we designed it to. I think that's why they have to add 1 or 2 bats later this season, and maybe that's just Jack, but you got to think, I mean, even just the way that they retooled things and the way that the lineup looked different last year, who knows who else is going to be willing to sell. I know that like one of the names that's out there of people are going to get moved is like Luis Robert from the Chicago White Sox, and he's not having a great season. He's not the all-star that he was 2, 3, 4 years ago, but maybe that's a guy who has some power, and it's a guy who maybe you can argue his production level is lower because he's playing for a team that he comes to the ballpark every day knowing, we're not really going to do anything. And maybe getting into an area where a winning team, maybe he can be a cheap option that could fix things, because I think that at this point he's probably a better option than like a Hunter Renfroe. So I don't know. We've seen over the weekend that they've reached the point of DFAing certain people who are not producing at the level expected of them. Chris Stratton was one of those guys who they signed 2 off seasons ago and was disappointing last season. Didn't change this season. It was much of the same problem, and now he's gone.
Money.
Exactly. And so I don't know if that's a point where you get to with Chris Stratton, or with Chris Stratton being on, Hunter Renfroe at some point, if things don't change, or what the deal will be. But I think that if they continue to get this level of pitching, the lineup is going to look different in August than it is now, just out of pure, they have to try different things. And I think they're at the point now where they can try moving guys around. And Maikel Garcia, he's been so productive, he doesn't necessarily have to just hit 5th all year long. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that they've been trying to move some guys around. They moved Jonathan India around a little bit this week, playing second base. That really did not go that well. I think they're trying to find a way to get his bat going, obviously trading for him this year, hoping that he'd be the leadoff guy. But I think Jonathan India is a perfect guy to frame this conversation around, because I know fans, and I know we've actually talked about this here on the show, potentially adding a bat here to the Royals. But I think when you talk about adding a bat to the Royals, you also have to maybe factor in when that player comes to Kansas City. Kauffman Stadium's just a tough ballpark to hit in. Their offensive numbers are probably going to dip just by the fact they're going to play in Kauffman Stadium, which is just not a hitter's park. This weekend, actually, Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas, the 2015 World Series champions, they were asked on Saturday kind of what are their thoughts on the ballpark. They said it's a beautiful ballpark, but this is in no way a hitter's park. I know some people have said maybe, there's a lot of room in the gaps. You can turn a lot of singles into doubles into triples. But the fact of the matter is, you look at almost any player, their offensive numbers are probably not as good as they would be in Kansas City as if they were say they played in Yankee Stadium, say they played in a hitter-friendly park. Kauffman Stadium is just hard to score offensively, which is why I think the Royals, again, coming back to roster construction, are constructed the way they are. And I think we're going to have to get to a point, just as you're saying, Hunter Renfroe, he's not getting the job done at Kauffman Stadium or really anywhere. And it's kind of at a certain point, I mean, there's a guy on the team right now who's producing at a higher level, I would argue, than Hunter Renfroe. Drew Waters came in the game yesterday in a pinch hit spot, hits the first pitch he sees, a triple up the right field line. I would make the argument, if you have Hunter Renfroe off the bench, you sub him in as a pinch hitter, he's not going to get a triple right there. Like that, I mean, Drew Waters, it's a results-oriented business. If Drew Waters does not come in, does not get that hit, the Royals might not win the game. And that is really all this comes down to. You cannot continue to run out players out there who are not going to help you on the field of play. And it seems this is going to lead us right into our next topic right here. Yesterday, the Royals called up their top prospect, Jac Caglianone, from AA to AAA Omaha. This is a move Royals fans have been wanting to see for a very long time. Ever since they saw Cags in spring training, we were first getting a look at this guy. He's 6'5", 240 pounds, and the thing that really stood out to me was he was a big leaguer, making other big leaguers look small. Like you'd see him in the video, standing next to Vinny Pasquantino. Vinny's a big guy, and Caglianone is just bigger. He was tearing it up in AA. I mean, he had a ball 120 miles an hour the other way. He had 9 homers in 38 games. I believe he led the Texas League in RBI. So, Gabe, here is my big question. We know the Royals are struggling on offense, and we know that Cags could potentially provide power that no one in the Royals lineup has. When will we see Jac Caglianone in Kansas City? Will it be June? Will it be July? Or what do you think?
Well, so he led the Texas League in RBIs. He was
second in home runs. I think he was
second
one behind.
home runs, yeah. And his batting average was in the 300s. A lot of the metrics were very good. They still gave him a month and a half to prove it, because you got to think AA starts middle of April, not the first weekend or the last weekend of March like the big leagues do. So he was a little behind in terms of just when the AA calendar starts. But to get to mid-May and be called up to AAA, now you can argue, okay, maybe they saw so much from AA that they don't need to see as long of a runway in AAA. They just need to see him continue to do similar things. But even then, and I think that some of the comments that we've heard from JJ Piccolo throughout the last several weeks and dating back to the last several times he's been asked specifically about Jac Caglianone and what they've seen from him in Double-A, there's been at least once or twice he's made comments about not wanting Jac Caglianone to feel like he has to be the fix, which goes to our earlier point about them probably having to make other additions and not make it just be, we're past the point of just thinking that this roster is going to, certain guys are going to turn it around on this roster who are not performing. So that means they're going to need to find others to go along with Jack, because otherwise, if the idea is just going to be, we don't want to call Jack up and make him feel like he has to be the fix for this offense, whether he can be that or not, and Royals fans certainly are hopeful that he could be that. If that's their frame of reference, they're not bringing him up until either they add someone else or the offense gets to the point where he is crushing AAA so much that they're not worried that he's got nothing left to prove there, and that they can bring him up and they just unequivocally believe he's better than any other option that they have. So I would say that at the earliest he'd be up by like July 4th, and that's a month and 2-ish weeks, a week and a half plus a month, so like 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks, and that I feel like is assuming that's making an assumption that he goes to Omaha and he continues to rake at the level that he raked in Northwest Arkansas. So that is a little bit of an assumption, but that feels like the best case scenario. The worst case scenario feels like they don't bring him up until post trade deadline, and they figure everything else out with what they're going to add to, and then they bring him up with the mentality, I don't know if I would necessarily agree with this, that he's going to, just because he gets called up, he's going to feel like he has to fix the whole offense. That would make me think that even when he does get called up, he's going to wind up hitting like 7th or 8th in the order, because they're not going to want to mess with his psyche. And if that's the case, then maybe they make all their moves in mid-July and they allow those things to kind of get sorted out, then they add him to the mix later this season. But I do think that the timing of this move in May almost guarantees that he's at least going to be a September call-up. That is like the bare minimum. Exactly.
I think a lot of this with Jac Caglianone, we're so focused on the offensive side of where he is at the plate, but I think a lot of this is also going to have to do is defensively. The Royals pride themselves on not allowing the other team to score, and we know maybe at first base. I mean, the Royals have a glut at first base. Vinny plays first base. Salvador Perez plays first base. So they've been putting Cags out in the outfield. I know he's played both left and right, but the thing is, when the Royals, what we have to talk about the Major League roster. This is the team that again struggles to score runs. You put Jac Caglianone in there, it is no guarantee that the offense automatically improves, but it's still, they will be playing in these games with razor-thin margins. So Jack is going to have to come up to the big leagues and not be a liability defensively, because if he is, he's unplayable in this lineup because they're not going to be able to score runs.
Yeah.
And you're going to be, it's just so, we're going to really have to see where he plays defensively. It looks maybe Jonathan India is going to have to be position locked maybe into left field, just seeing how things have kind of gone here in the last couple of days when he was trying to play second base, kind of costing the Royals maybe some runs, certainly some outs there in the series here against the Cardinals. But Jac Caglianone, Royals fans, very excited. He's now one step away from the big leagues. We'll see how he does at AAA. His first game for AAA Omaha, I believe, is going to be tomorrow. But by all accounts, things have been going great for him. I know some of the folks that covered him in AA say he was a pleasure to be around, that he really was tearing the cover off the ball there. So very exciting there.
Did you see what happened in Omaha Friday night?
Oh, MJ Melendez walk-off ding dong. How about that? So maybe there could be some more help on the way. Good to see MJ do that. How about that? Oh, deep cut there from Gabe. Two more topics here kind of quickly we're going to get through here. The Big 12 tournament starts this weekend down in Arlington, Texas. And how about this? The Kansas Jayhawks are in the 2 seed at the Big 12 tournament. They had 42 wins this season, 20 wins in conference, the most all-time in program history, just the 3rd year under head coach Dan Fitzgerald. Gabe, this is a veteran group, a lot of JUCO transfers. KU not obviously known for baseball. To see this turnaround under Coach Fitzgerald in just his 3rd year, pretty remarkable just looking at this.
Yeah, and they're playing a fun style of baseball in terms of just kind
hitting
of
homers,
mashing the ball. Yeah, exactly. Hitting. I think that they had more home runs in more home runs than any team in Kansas history by
they set the record pretty early in the season.
Early in conference play or by the end of non-conference play. Exactly. I know that KU fans were pretty heated this weekend with them not winning the conference just solely based on the fact that West Virginia, who they beat swept in a road series at West Virginia, and they didn't win the conference because West Virginia just played 2 fewer games due to rainouts and such. If I'm the Big 12, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If I'm being completely honest, but who's to say? Well, maybe they'll get to settle it in a championship game in Arlington later this week.
We got to get Brett Yormark on the phone. We got to settle this.
Yeah, they had 7 different tiebreakers for the football scenarios this past fall, and then you get to baseball and it's just, well, I guess they played 2 fewer games. Whatever, we're just gonna go win percentage, even though the head-to-head was a clean sweep on the road. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It will be interesting to see. I think K-State is in a spot where they're certainly in the conversation for or need like a win to lock up a tournament spot. There's several Big 12 teams that are in that scenario. I don't know if necessarily any of them will be hosting for a NCAA tournament regional or for super regionals at all. It would take some crazy things going on, but I have seen, I think D1 baseball had like a projection this past weekend that KU would be going to Arkansas, which would be intriguing, just based on the proximity in specific. But we'll see what happens, and it should be exciting. We're getting into that point where KU is going to get a chance to prove whether they're able to go from the best regular season in program history to one of the best postseason runs in program history. So we'll see how it rolls out.
Yeah, today Dan Fitzgerald met with the media to kind of talk about for the Big 12 preview. They're down there in Arlington getting ready for that tournament, and he says KU is in the conversation to host one of these regionals. Now, only 16 regionals across the entire country, so KU would have to vault up into that top 16. I don't know if new rankings have come out this week, but KU was not ranked in the last poll. But the good news is they did just sweep the number 14 team in the country on the road. So if KU were to go down to Arlington and play well, they are the 2 seed. Say they go to the conference championship game, maybe mess around and win the whole thing. They would have to be in the conversation to host a regional, which is a big step for the Kansas baseball program. We have to give a shout out because that is not something I had on my bingo card going into the regular season for KU baseball. So shout out to them. Now we do have one last topic to talk about today, and it was the PGA Championship yesterday at Quail Hollow. Scottie Scheffler winning his 3rd major title. Gabe, this was quite a little tournament. I know a lot of fans maybe not as into this one as usual. It was played at a normal PGA Tour stop, and they were saying that maybe the leaderboard wouldn't stack up to what it would be. But all I know is when I was watching on Sunday, we had Scottie, we had John Rahm, we had Bryson. I mean, we had a who's who on the leaderboard. What are your kind of thoughts on the tournament overall? And then obviously with the greatness of Scottie, it was him and Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods, the only players in history to win 3 majors and 15 PGA Tour titles before turning 30. So we are watching an all-time great right now.
Yeah, it feels like we're on a pretty good run of major winners from all of last year plus this season of Scottie winning the Masters last season, 2 the PGA and the Open from Xander Schauffele. Bryson wins the U.S. Open. Rory wins the Masters. Scottie, that's about as good as it gets. And
might be the 4 best players in the world right there.
Exactly. I'm in the boat of the last 2 PGA championships are not venues that I am super fired up for. I didn't think that Valhalla last season was much of a test in terms of there was really no penalty. It was just you're going to go make birdies all day long, and to me that's not a major championship test. This year, and even Quail Hollow, I felt like, if anything, the most impressive part about it for Scottie is that his superpower is avoiding hitting the dumb shot and avoiding hitting greenside bunkers and just hitting it to the green, hitting it close proximity with his irons. And he beat everybody by 5. It could have been 6. He bogeyed the 72nd hole, and he did it on a course where the rest of his competitors who miss the greens more frequently than him and miss the fairways more frequently than him and all these kinds of things, they're not being penalized as much because the greenside bunkers at Quail Hollow were not really much of a penalty for the most part. But I thought it was incredibly impressive where everybody else was melting down on 16, 17, 18, and both Saturday and Sunday he stepped up and he hit the shots that he needed to. And to me, it just makes the rest of the summer more interesting. It makes the rest of his career more interesting that he keeps adding to it. And I think that for as much as people are like, oh, he's kind of a boring ho-hum guy, he gets more and more interesting the more that he wins because he just begins to start chasing all of the other legends of golf.
It's funny that you bring that up, that a lot of people kind of feel like Scottie has this aw shucks attitude, that he's a ho-hum guy, because honestly, when I watch him out there, I think this is a golfer with the closest embodiment of the Mamba mentality that we have seen probably since Tiger Woods. This is a guy who is not, I mean, Jon Rahm kind of has that, but we saw him yesterday falter. I mean, Scottie Scheffler, he did not have his swing this week. He was talking about that on Thursday and Friday. He did not have it, and he went out there and he won a major championship against the best players in the world without his best stuff. I mean, this guy, we have got, he gets this kind of this rap as like, oh, he's just aw shucks, but this guy, I mean, it's truly remarkable what we're seeing. I think the game of golf right now in a really cool space that we're seeing. I think an interesting conversation, we were talking about this a little bit off air, Jon Rahm really rising, competing here in this major championship, but I think a big question maybe for these live golfers, we know obviously Jon Rahm, one of the best players in the world, Bryson DeChambeau, one of the best players in the world, but they did falter down the stretch, and I think there is a big question for these live golfers. Are the courses that they're playing in their week-to-week tournaments, are those challenging enough for where they're able to perform at the highest level at major championships? Because some of these venues at the live golf, they have as much money as anybody in the world. They're powered by the Saudi government. They're playing tournaments at places that Gabe, you and I could book tee times at. So what do you kind of make of how these live golfers have performed in the majors?
Well, I think that what live has done is it bums me out as a golf fan that like it's not our job as consumers of sports. It's the one industry in which you kind of do want a near monopoly on the competition because it's better for us if all of the best players are competing against each other. So the whole argument of, oh, they have different options to make money and they can go play on different, like, yeah, I understand it's better for the players, like good for the rich guys. The rich guys are getting richer, but it doesn't do anything for me as a golf fan. I think that it has proven who on that tour does and does not actually care about the results because Bryson and Jon Rahm have proven it every once in a while. Brooks Koepka's faded. Cam Smith has faded. Dustin Johnson is completely irrelevant. There's several others that you can say. But truly at its core, it bums me out because we should get those battles between so many of those guys. We should get Scottie against Rahm and Scottie against Bryson frequently. And we have to hope that it happens at the 4 weekends a year that are the majors. And that's our only chance. So I'm glad that it happened kind of this week. Scottie still lifted and separated. Yeah. But overall, it just bums me out as a golf fan.
Yeah, it certainly was cool to see Scottie and Jon Rahm duke it out, but Jon Rahm faltered in the end. Scottie rose, and he's now a 3-time major champion. So that's all we have here on this Monday edition of KC Sports Tonight. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow, guys. Thank you.